Hi everyone, this is Good Morning Games. My name is Jason,
And I'm Alex.
and today we're going to talk about the sequel to Breath of the Wild, which I know everybody is excited for and wants to learn a little bit more about. So we're just going to kind of talk about what we think we could be seeing in it, or at least what we want, and maybe just some changes. So first off, Alex, do you want to maybe go over a little bit about what we do know?
Sure. So this was announced during Nintendo's E3 Direct in 2019. We got a short teaser trailer there. There was no release date for it officially announced. The last update we've had on this game from Zelda producer Eiji Onuma was during the February 2021 Nintendo Direct. And here's his direct quote. It says, "Unfortunately, we do not have anything to share right now. We apologize. Development is proceeding smoothly, and we should be able to bring you some new information this year. For now, we'll have to ask you to wait just a bit longer." So, obviously, that means this year we will be getting more news on Breath of the Wild 2. Um, we don't know when. Could be as part of the Zelda 35th anniversary later this year. We'll see what happens. There's no official title for this game as of now. Could be cool to see Breath of the Wild 2 as the official title. It'd be the first time since Zelda 2, The Adventures of Link on NES, where they use a number for a sequel or for the next game in the Zelda series. I don't think they've ever used a number outside of that NES game. And as far as we know, I mean, there's no official release date. A lot of people speculate it could be coming the end of this year. Some people think early next year. Some people think holiday 2022. I, for me personally, I think it'll be a holiday 21 game, probably launching alongside the Switch Pro or Super Switch, whatever they decide to call that. Um, but yeah, the original Breath of the Wild, favorite game of all time. Just want to preface this whole podcast by saying that. So, big Breath of the Wild stan right here.
It's definitely one of my favorites as well. So let's just kind of jump right into it. I guess, the only thing that we really can go off of is the only trailer that's been released. We saw them in some sort of, it looked like underground, maybe under the castle. And it just had a lot darker tones. And then we pretty much saw them come up to the body of what looked like Ganondorf. And that's really all we know. So I guess, the one thing we can kind of go off of is it seems like it's going to be a lot darker. And that kind of is reminiscent of Majora's Mask was technically a direct sequel of Ocarina of Time, and that was a lot darker too. So it seems like it's going that direction. Now, they did say in a couple of interviews that they're kind of using the same map. That's the point. They're taking all this time to make the world of Hyrule even better than they had it the first time. So I guess what do you think? How can they make the map different enough that, as we know, exploration was a huge point of Breath of the Wild. So, I think that how are they going to change it and make it feel new?
Yeah, I think we're gonna see a pretty similar layout as far as the map of Hyrule goes. We'll see the Rito up in the northwest, the Death Mountain area in the northeast, Gerudo Valley southwest, Zora southeast area, and then the Hyrule Castle sort of towards the center there. I don't really think you could change those locations of those major environments that are part of the original map, but I do think we'll see stuff like because some time has passed, assuming time has passed since the last game, I think we'll see new developments, new towns like popped up throughout the map in different areas. Maybe some environmental changes like a mountain here that wasn't here before for whatever reason, or a cave here, maybe some underground areas to explore. I think that'd be a good bet based on what we saw in the trailer. Yeah, I mean, same pretty much overall map, but just new stuff in it. I don't know,
Yeah.
new like kind of like how Terrytown got built over the course of the first game. Maybe like we'll have seen other stuff that got built between the two games.
Yeah. Yeah. What kind of my first thought, and it could be completely wrong. my first two thoughts are that it could be like a dark world, like a Link to the Past,
Yeah.
where it's that same map, but now everything has kind of changed and become this darkness. Like I was thinking where there was like ponds and lakes, now they're more like swamps, and like the desert is more like I don't know. Everything's just changed. Everything, so it's the same map, but everything's changed so much, and there's like poison in places or something like that.
Yeah.
Um, I could somewhat see that. Another thought I had is you kind of mentioned this too. Maybe they'll be more, as it showed them kind of, it looked like underground, maybe under the castle. So maybe there's a whole new, a huge area that is underground. I think that would be really cool to have. Like, yeah, you can be on the overworld, but then there's all these caverns and caves that are like they find underneath. So it's almost like, you pull up the map and it's got that overworld, but then you can, hit down and it's got a whole other map that's underground. So
That would be
that'd be really
incredible.
cool. Yeah. Um, so I think besides the map, I think we can really talk about some changes that we think to the actual core game that we want or that we think are cool. I think the first thing to touch on would be probably the biggest that most people have talked about is having actual dungeons like the other games instead of the divine beasts. I know you said you don't care as much about this. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know. Dungeons are, they're obviously a pretty big part of the entire Zelda series. I kind of liked how Breath of the Wild, the original, did it with the shrines. I thought those were, and the Divine Beast. I think that was a good alternative to the classic dungeon setup. Whenever I play a Zelda game and I'm in a dungeon, I just want to get out of it as fast as possible. I just want to complete it, fight the cool boss, get the unique item, and get back to the overworld to explore more. So I was more than okay with the shrines and thought the four big divine beast kind of dungeony areas were really cool too. So if they decided to add dungeons and keep shrines and keep divine beast type things, or maybe dungeons instead of divine beasts and just have dungeons and shrines, I think that would be fine. But then again, we don't know if that would then limit like the complete openness of the game. How in the first one you could just go wherever you wanted from the very beginning. Maybe dungeons, if they have a unique item at the end that unlocks another area, then they kind of get away from that philosophy they had where you can go anywhere right from the minute the game starts. So we'll have to wait and see what they decide to do there. But if they do bring dungeons back that have unique bosses at the end of them, I'm for that. That could be cool.
Yeah, yeah, and I loved the shrines too. I would say the main thing that I didn't like so much about the divine beasts is it's not that I didn't have fun in them. I thought that they were good. I just didn't like how they all looked the same inside, and they kind of had the same feeling inside. And then the boss at the end was just a alteration of the same boss. So that's
Yeah.
me. That's mainly my reason why I think it'd be really cool if they had those like earth, fire, water, whatever temples, just because you go in and you never. In Breath of the Wild, you kind of knew what to expect after the first one, so it'd be cool to go in and it's this whole different looking environment. I just think that would be cool. I still would. I'm with you that I definitely don't want there to be less shrines, or I mean, maybe there could be less, but I don't want them to get rid of shrines. I think
Yeah.
it'd be cool if I think there was 120 shrines in the first one. If they did half that, if they did 60 shrines, and then 4, 5, 6 huge dungeons, I think that would be really cool.
Yeah, that could be good. I think we talked about it a little bit before, but the just having a little more variety with the dungeons, because like the test of strength one, there were so many of those. I don't know exactly how many, but it was just different versions of that same little guardian that would come out with like his Swiss Army knife collection of guardian axes and swords, and you just have to fight that same thing over and over and over again. So I don't know, maybe a little more variety in the shrines, but having fewer of them could be a cool way to do it. And then adding 4 or 5 or 6 or however many dungeons they want to do. Yeah, I think that could be cool. And definitely, I mean, I don't see how they could work the divine beast back into this story.
Yeah.
Like you have to go through and do all that again. I don't think that would be different
Yeah, I don't think
enough.
so.
So they're going to need to have something to replace that aspect of the original game, and traditional dungeons would be a good way to do that.
Yeah, and with the regular shrines, like I also think like first off, yeah, like you said with the test of strength, they could still have those because I actually did like them, but it would just be cool if they changed it up a little more. Like instead of the little mini guardians, each one it'd say test of strength, and it was a different crazy enemy that we haven't seen before. And, they just created a new enemy for each one of them or something like that. I also think that it wasn't a big deal, and it's not until I'm actually thinking about it. I do think it would be cool if they changed up even how the shrines, maybe they don't call them shrines at the same type of thing, but again, so that they don't all look the same. It was fine for Breath of the Wild, and it's not like it would bug me that much because it was amazing, but it'd be cool if they had 60 whatever they want to call them shrines, but they also looked a little different. Like it wasn't just that blue wall. Just looks. I think looks are really important just because it's like it gives a feel. If you go in a shrine and it's this place like full of fire, that would be awesome.
Yeah,
that'd
be sick.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say another point to that would be I think they used shrines in the first one sort of as like fast travel, because you couldn't fast travel anywhere. You could only go to shrines and things that were connected via the Sheikah Slate thing or whatever, the Sheikah Slate 5G. So I think if they only had half as many shrines, it might make getting around the map a little more difficult, but I'm sure they would figure out some kind of way to fix that.
Yeah. So another thing that, besides the lack of dungeons, another thing that I had like a little bit of a problem with, and I think as we've said multiple times now, it's good to preface that overall this game is like one of the best games of all time.
Yeah.
So it's not like it's that big of an issue, but I do wish that there was a little more, the story was interweaving into it a little bit more, just because the way they did the story was, they put that openness first so much that the only way they could really get the story in was through collecting those memories and having those cutscenes, which it was a cool way to do it, but I just would like it better if, even if it does make it a little bit more linear, I would like it if you had a task at the start, you're given a task right from the beginning, it's okay for you to go off and do other things. It doesn't take away from that. But once you get to that place, now there's a huge cutscene, something happens, maybe something is unlocked, a new area, and then you go to that. And then once you go there, something in the story happens. I like story so much in games, and I like the gameplay of Breath of the Wild was amazing, but I just think that would add to it even more. I just think it would make it better. It's not that it made it bad in the last one.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's like kind of strange playing a game and every cutscene is a flashback. Like it just kind of, there's something about it where it's like, oh, this already happened. So like it doesn't feel as exciting as you're playing the game. It's like, oh, that happened. Okay, well, back to whatever I was doing.
And a majority of the cutscenes were in the trailer. The trailers that we had seen leading up to it, which like almost makes me not like. I told myself recently, I doubt I'll be able to do this, but I told myself the next big trailer, I'm going to watch it, and then I'm going to try not to watch anything after that.
Yeah, good luck.
I probably won't be able to do it. But that was like I just remember in the awesome trailer everyone probably knows when they like revealed the release date, there was that part where like Zelda was running and then she bent down, she was crying, and that was like so epic. And then when it happened in the game, it was just like, I already saw that. That was like, that was probably like the most deep scene in this whole thing.
And it doesn't even happen in the game. It's just a flashback to an event that happened before the game. So
yeah.
I think it'd be cool to have more of a current, like you're playing the story rather than learning the story.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean that there needs to be tons of cutscenes or anything. It's just, like you said, it just adds to it. And so that kind of leads into something I said about, and this kind of goes with the dungeons and the story aspect. I think a little bit more linearity could help it. Now, that does not need to mean it's not completely open. It's still completely open, but I think it would be cool if once you do all these things, you go to the first dungeon, and let's say there are 5 other dungeons, but they're like locked or something, and you do need to beat that first one, and then you get an item in that then helps you unlock the second one. I like that, and the reason I say that is because it gives you more of a sense of progression, and each dungeon can then be harder than the last one. Because that was another thing with Breath of the Wild is, by the time you were pretty much on the third of the 4 divine beasts, it was way easier just because you were kind of like overpowered. So yeah, I just think that'd be cool. And also, you could get the Master Sword if you wanted to. You could get that right away in Breath of the Wild, or I guess once you had however many hearts. And that actually like made those what were the bosses called? I can't of the 4 divine beasts. Whatever it was called.
The Ganons?
Fire Blight Ganon or whatever. Yeah. If you had the Master Sword, it like did triple damage because it would light up when it was around him, so you could kill him super fast. That was actually kind of cool that they did that, but I just think it would be nice if there was more of a sense of progression and each one gets harder than the last.
Yeah, I think having the amount of hearts to get the Master Sword is like the only the only thing I could think of where is like you need to do this before you can do this, like technically speaking. In the first game. Yeah, I think more of that stuff is cool. Like a giant, you're just exploring and then you see this giant like locked gate somewhere. It's like you can't go here yet, and maybe they don't tell you why or anything, but then eventually you figure it out. Stuff like that. I'm okay with that being in the game. Like I don't think you lose a lot being able to go everywhere right from the beginning, because the game's probably going to be so huge it doesn't matter if you can't go to one little area. Like there's still a ton of other places to go. I'd be all right with that.
Yeah, I almost feel like they, once they, obviously complete guess, but once they, realized what they were making, they had this idea, like, let's make this the most open thing ever. It's like, how are we going to make this so, like, let's make, like, maybe this could be locked. Someone says in a meeting, like, what if we have this dungeon locked? No. Like, no. This is the most open game of all. This is the most open game of all time. Yeah. Which is awesome. But, it's like some of those things, it's fine. It could still be an open world, incredibly open world game with some things being kind of like locked.
Yeah. They said that this was just sort of like a parallel to the very first Legend of Zelda game, where in that you could go to anywhere from the very beginning, and that was, I think, one of the first things they decided when they started developing this. So like, we want you to be able to go anywhere from the beginning, just like the first one. So that's cool.
But even with that, like, which you're right, they completely did, but I just played that recently, and I like, when you would go in a dungeon, it says what like level number it was, and it was like I would go. I went in a dungeon, and it was like the second one I went into, but it was like level 6 or something, and I just got
destroyed.
Wrecked, like like the first room you were wrecked. So it's like even with that, they still had like there's no way you could do this unless you've played this game 100 times.
Yeah. No, I agree. It's like you can do it, but why would you if you're just going to get destroyed every time?
Yeah, really, in Breath of the Wild, I felt like the castle was the only thing like that. Where, like, if you tried to go to the castle, you would get destroyed right away.
Yeah. I mean, at first, like, stuff like the Lynels, the little mini-bosses, like the Hynix, that stuff was really tough at first, but then as you progress, eventually, a Hynix just becomes another villain, another enemy. A Lynel, a white Lynel even eventually just becomes, like, another enemy, where it's like, you figure out how to beat it, and it's not too difficult.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Let's see. Speaking of also items wise, I think it'd be cool to have some new items. Maybe bring back some. So I looked up like some of the items that were in past games that weren't in Breath of the Wild that I thought were cool. They had the ball and chain from Twilight Princess. There was a hammer. They had those bomb chew bombs. They had the boomerang you could have as a weapon, but it wasn't really used as much as like you need this item in Breath of the Wild. There was a spinner, the hook shot. I think hook shot. Come on, they got to.
Hook shot's got to come back. I love the hook shot.
Yeah, that was like the one that it felt like it was missing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd be cool with not necessarily those, but I just think it'd be cool to add some new items, which again could be, like I said, like you get it in. I liked that you got a new item in each dungeon in the past games. It'd be cool if they had that where you got a new item and you're like, yes, now this unlocks some more places I can go or something like that.
Climbing would be so much easier if you had a hook shot. Like, I like the challenge of climbing in that game because it's like, oh god, I can't get up this mountain until I have this much stamina. But if you just had areas to hook shot to, and that would make it, I think that'd make it more fun. Honestly, I think that'd be sick.
Yeah.
But yeah, having more unique items in the game that we've seen in past games, that's a great idea. We maybe like a new instrument, how we had like the ocarina in the past, having some new thing, some new gimmick. I don't want to call it a gimmick, but some new item that Link has to use.
Yeah, I loved the ocarina and I loved the Wind Waker. Like, I don't know, something about that like is just awesome to me, that you learn these like songs and then when you play them, they can just do, they can come up with tons of things that it does.
Yeah.
It was awesome, like changing night to day and like just like things like that. It was just really cool.
Yeah.
So I'd definitely be down with a new instrument or new runes as well. You had the 4 or 5 in Breath of the Wild. I wouldn't be surprised if they add more. In this one.
I think new runes are a pretty safe bet. One thing, I loved the cooking aspect of the first Breath of the Wild. I would like to see more recipes, more like unique stuff, so where you're just messing around, like throwing things together in the pot, instead of copious simmered veggie or whatever it says when you just throw a bunch of mush into the pot. Like there's more
it just
crazy.
Looks like a
it just looks like a
gross bundle.
Just looks like gruel. I wish there'd be like some crazy recipes where you throw everything together and it's like, oh, you just made like a really awesome potion, like more unique stuff that's harder to craft. I'd be in for that. And then talking about the Sheikah Slate, if there was a like recipe book, like a cookbook where you could save all, like once you learn a recipe, it's stored in the Sheikah Slate and then you can go look at it. That would be so helpful. I don't know why that wasn't in the first game.
Yeah, I think every time you make a recipe, it goes in the cookbook. That'd be awesome. And also like along with that, like just in general, I think like just more like databases could be useful. I think that would be the most useful. But then even things like seeing like if you want to see like about an enemy, you have a database of the enemies and it like says where their weak spots are or like where they're located. Like you highlight a Lionel and then it has like highlighted on the map where they are. Things like that would be really cool. Just because sometimes you need to get like a Bokoblin horn or something. It'd be cool if you could see where that is. That'd be cool. So another thing that a lot I've seen people kind of talk about is the weapon durability. So I think that they have to keep it. I think that was a huge part, but I do kind of think it would be cool if they added a few things. I think it'd be cool if they allowed for like weapon updates or upgrades, or you could take a weapon to go to get repaired.
Yeah.
I think that would be really cool because I've kind of mentioned before to you, like the thing that really bugged me was the special weapons that you got when you would beat a divine beast, like from the Zora champion or whatever. You would get like a awesome spear and then you'd use it for like 10 minutes and it was broken.
Yep.
And so the second time I played like the Master Quest, I ended up just stashing them in my house. I would put those on the wall and it's like, yeah, that's cool, but like it'd be nice if you could use them and then repair them for money or something like that. I also think maybe they could have like if you wanted, maybe you could toggle it on or off, but it would be nice to have like a damage bar with your weapons so you knew, because normally all it did is you would just guess and then eventually it'd be like your thing is about to break. So it's like, it'd be nice to know when you have like half left or something like that.
Yeah, I think that'd be great. I don't know if I want like a meter under every weapon, but yeah, maybe another
Yeah,
warning like your weapon is at half durability or something. Like that would be
yeah.
good. I just finished Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity a couple weeks ago, and in that game you can like combine weapons to beef up other weapons. I think some system like that could be useful in this game. Just so you can keep the ones you want and get rid of the trash that you don't want. But
Yeah.
yeah, we'll see what they decide to do there.
Yeah. I also think something that really worked for Breath of the Wild, but I wouldn't mind changing is uh the music or lack thereof in Breath of the Wild. It worked amazing and it was perfect for that game. But and I probably wouldn't have a problem if it didn't change, but I just was playing Wind Waker, and like hearing any song in Wind Waker just makes me so happy. Like and that made me think about all the other games. They all have like songs that it just reminds you of that. And Zelda music has always been so amazing. So I, I wouldn't mind if they brought like more music back, but at the same time, it's probably not that big of a deal because I do think that minimalist like piano and stuff was awesome in Breath of the Wild. So that's just more of a thought. Like I'd be fine either way.
Some of the music in Breath of the Wild is incredible, and yeah, like the just like their stylistic choice, like the design of the game, I think they said was just to go very minimal, like to
Yeah.
have like a connection to nature because that's pretty much where the whole game takes place is like outdoors and forests and mountains and shit. But yeah, I don't know, having more actually full like songs, and maybe this would come if they do add an instrument back into the game.
Yeah.
That's like something I wouldn't mind seeing more of. That's sort of a big staple of Zelda games in the past. So yeah, bringing that back would be cool.
Mm-hmm. And something I kind of forgot to mention when we were talking about the weapon durability. So in the trailer, it showed that Link had the Master Sword, and I have to think that that clip was probably towards the beginning of the game. I don't know why, but I just have a feeling. So that's. Do you think that you're going to start with the Master Sword from the get go?
I think so. I don't know if they're gonna make you track it down again, but of course they have made him track it down however many games there are.
Yeah,
So like
18 or
I don't know.
19, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, so starting with it, that could be really cool. I don't know, but getting like it's it's a double edged. God damn
Yeah.
it, double edged master sword.
Yeah.
But if you could start with it, and that would be sick. But then like also Zelda games, like getting the master sword is always like this cool big milestone that happens in the games, and it's like a really exciting moment. So I don't know if I want to get rid of that. So, but I do think I something tells me you're just going to start with it this time. If it's a like a direct sequel, which they're saying it is, like, and it just picks up not long after the last game ended. So we'll see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Um, I think that one big thing that they'll have to change is if it's going to be the same world and everything. I do think they'll have to have a lot of new enemies. I don't think they can just, even if the world's different, I don't think you can just roll into the game and if the first thing I see is those same bokoblins and those things, like that'll
Yeah.
kind of be disappointing. I think they have to I think they have to make a bunch of them, and I don't really doubt that they will. I'm sure. And again, that could be, if you are underground for a big part of it, maybe there's a whole other bunch of species and stuff like that. But I do think that would be important.
You just start the game with the master sword. First enemy is a white Lionel.
Yeah,
Like,
there
all
you
right, here we go.
Yeah, all right, I'm back. I'd probably be just as happy like it would.
Yeah, that's fine.
We're back. um. So my laundry. Um. I'll get that later.
Yeah.
What do we think about you had mentioned Terrytown. I think it would be cool to have more life, more towns, stuff like that.
Yeah.
What do you
I
think?
think we'll get that. I think we'll get more, yeah, more inhabitants, like more people to talk to. Because I mean that was the whole point of the game, right? Was to restore life to Hyrule of the first one. So I think we'll get back to that, and hopefully they're not all gone again from some other giant catastrophe happening.
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
I think more like life, maybe bigger towns, more people, and like that just because I love that was like honestly one of my favorite moments playing the game was, which this is a lame, but I just remember when you first, what was the first village you went to, Kakariko? Um
yeah,
yeah, like
yeah,
when you entered that and it was like, the just the whole vibe of it. And it was the first real town you had seen. And I just remember walking in there and being like, "Oh, yes, this is amazing."
yeah.
And then
Yeah.
there wasn't that many towns in the game, and
No, there weren't.
I wish there were some more. And I that kind of goes in hand with like, I also kind of hope that if there's more towns and more people, I hope there's more like mini games or just like ways to pass time. They had a few,
There
but
was some cool stuff. The shield
yeah,
surfing.
that's what I was gonna say. They had
Yeah,
shield surfing. They had a few, but I loved like in Ocarina when you walked in that shop and had to pop the balloons game and stuff like
yeah,
that. Like,
yeah. I hope that's
um,
there.
yeah. So that'd be awesome.
Yeah, it was almost like throughout the map they would have those little stables that you could find. Like those kind of acted as like mini towns, I guess, because there'd be like a little merchant or inn, and you could get your horse. Those were cool, but and those could stay. I'm not saying get rid of stables, but just something else that's scattered throughout the map that's kind of like a town. I guess I'm
Hmm.
talking about a town.
Yeah, but yeah,
Just
no,
have
I
more of
agree.
those.
Yeah. The only other thing I have of note is this. Honestly, this didn't bug me. I just saw it pointed out in like a couple articles I was reading. Is that I, like based on that trailer, it looked like it's gonna be Ganondorf is the enemy, which is different than Ganon. Ganondorf was like the human
Hmm.
form, and I think it would be nice if the villain, if it's Ganondorf, like it's something that has some sort of like personality or evil presence, because it was like with the
Yeah,
Calamity Ganon, it was just like you don't even know what it was. It was
just
just
smoke.
this, yeah, just like it was like the smoke monster from Lost. Like it was just like
Yeah.
around, surrounded the castle, and that's it. So I think it would be cool to go back to other ones where there was like actually a person that's the villain. So I'm hoping for that.
Yeah, I'd be all right with Ganondorf coming back. I think that'd be cool. Maybe I mean some new design of Ganondorf.
Hmm.
Since all since Link kind of got redesigned for this game. Um, yeah, I think that'd be a good addition.
Hmm.
Some other stuff that I think is going to be going on here with this game. I In the trailer that we saw, we see Link and Zelda down in that cavern exploring. I think they're going to make Zelda a playable character for the first time. There's a lot of stuff online speculating that. So that's not a new take by any means, but I do think that based on what we saw, it just seems like I mean, we've never seen Zelda out like with Link, like in gear that she's like out adventuring, like we saw in that trailer. I think that's something we're gonna get, and uh, I think it's important to remember this is the first Zelda game. I'm not counting Link's Awakening, but this is the first one developed for the Switch entirely because the first one was basically developed for Wii U and then I guess you could say ported to Switch.
Hmm.
Or maybe it was like hastily made for Switch and ported to Wii U. Whatever. Like this is for the Switch from the ground up. So I think they're going to want to take advantage of the two Joy-Con thing, like they've done since the Switch came out, and be like, you could pop the Joy-Con off and play Breath of the Wild 2 co-op together, one Link, one Zelda. That would be a
Yeah.
wild like departure from old games, but I something tells me we're going to see that. Maybe you start this game playing as Zelda. Like, who
Yeah.
knows?
Yeah, it could do multiple ways. Yeah, it could be like that two player. They could do where you just are both, like you switch off, like maybe you have
Yeah,
one bit with Link, one bit with Zelda. And this Zelda of all of them was probably, I feel like, of any of the games, the most like adventurous, or like it seemed like she
yeah,
wanted to explore and like fight.
yeah,
So
yeah. I
so I can
agree.
definitely see that. Yeah, definitely.
And then one other thing, since again this is being made for the Switch, I hope they do stuff with HD Rumble with the Joy-Con, because they did not take advantage of that for the first one. I think they just ran out of development time, but yeah, having some sort of like rumble when you're close to a shrine, like the moons and Mario Odyssey, or specific rumbles for like pulling your string back on a bow and arrow and then letting go of it, or throwing a boomerang, stuff like that would be really cool to implement. And maybe even touchscreen, like some of these Switch specific features, like when you're playing handheld, be able to use the touchscreen on the map. I remember that drove me crazy in the first one that you couldn't do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll see what they end up doing.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, yeah, I have all the trust in the world that this will be just as good, if not better, or even if it's the slightest bit worse, that's still amazing.
Yeah.
I have no doubt that this is going to be great. Yeah, when I first kind of heard it was the same overworld, I was a little bit nervous, but now as time's passed, I'm kind of like they'll figure it out. I'm not worried about it.
Yeah, I mean, whatever they do, whether it's like the same map with more stuff on it, like more towns, more caves, whatever, or if they do like an underground world that's just like the map again but underneath, or if they just have some dark world version of it, like any of that's fine. And I'm sure sure they'll figure it out to make it not so redundant from the first game.
Yeah. And I mean, like the fact that from I think what we've heard, this started out as when they were working on DLC for Breath of the Wild, and then they were like, oh, this is too much, like let's just start the next one. So I mean, if that's true, that means this has been in development for at least 4 years, which is like the length of most, even more than some other Zelda games. So it's like it's gonna be a full new thing.
Yeah. I mean, Majora's Mask was what, like 12 or 18 months after Ocarina of Time. And that felt like a brand new game, at least to me.
For sure.
I don't know.
Yeah.
And this is taking 4 years at least. So, yeah, I think we're gonna see whatever we end up getting. It'll probably be amazing. It'll probably have something that nobody expected or predicted, and I think, chances are everybody's going to be really happy with it. I think there's like a 1% chance this game sucks. I don't think that's a possibility.
I wouldn't be mad or surprised if everything we just said is not in this at all.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't matter. It could still be just as amazing.
It's a Labo exclusive.
Yeah. They'd make that amazing. You build the Master Sword. Just this flimsy sword.
Perfect. Yeah. Breath of the Wild 2 cardboard Master Sword. $150.
Yeah. All right. Well, with that, unless you have anything else?
No, I don't think so. I just hope we see this game this year. That's all I want.
Yeah, I really, really hope. I'm giving them this year, maybe, man, I'll give it a year from today, which is March. If it's not out by mid-March next, I'm going to be pissed off, but you know what? It'll be amazing either way. I'm just antsy. Yeah,
that's the latest it'll come out, I think, is March, unless we get another COVID or like some other horrible disaster, some calamity,
another pandemic.
Yeah, it just throws everything out of whack. I think as long as development stays on track, hopefully this holiday or March 2022 at the latest.
Yeah, cool. Well, with that, again, we are Good Morning Games. I'm Jason.
I'm Alex.
And thank you so much for listening.
See ya.
See ya.
See ya.